Hello, everyone, and welcome to another very special episode of Seminoles Sideline 365. Once again, it's KB. I am without the old man today because he is actually traveling. He's going to be up here with me and the family for the holidays. So we're making sure he got safe. He had a little flight delay today. So if you are traveling, especially on the East Coast, be safe out there. We know it's cold. We got this cold solar polar plunge going on. So if you're traveling this week, especially, we hope you get where you're trying to get to safe. And that's why we're trying to make some more shorter videos for you because you may be in a 3 hour to 4 hour delay like the old man was today, and you may have a lot of time in your hands. So you're going to be getting a lot of content, not just from us, from a lot of FSU and NCAA football media. So good thing is you'll be able to search on YouTube and find a lot of great content out there, especially with early signing day coming tomorrow or Wednesday of this week, along with all the portal activity that's going on. So we hope we can help you pass the time. This won't be a long show, just some topic I wanted to bring up today, as it's been kind of bugging me and something I feel like just has to be discussed, is the whole big playmakers that were close to either committing to Florida State or did commit to Florida State before flipping at the last second. And this is right on the eve of National Signing or Early Signing Day. So I thought it was relevant to talk about. Two of those playmakers are actually in the portal right now, and their names obviously are Travis Hunter and Kevin Coleman. Just looking at what they did, both those players, they didn't have astronomical numbers. Both of them followed primetime Deion Sanders to Jackson State. Neither of them had huge numbers, I wouldn't say, in any regards, but they had numbers nonetheless as true freshmen playing with Prime in his program with Jackson State. Travis Hunter was banged up for most of the season, but you saw if you watched the Celebration Bowl against NC Central, you saw what he is capable of, which is being a star receiver that's able to compete at the next level when he's healthy. And he played both sides of the ball when he against North Carolina Central. Excuse me for mispronouncing that before. I think you finished the game. Well, he had the game tying touchdown, I believe it was. And I'm just trying to remember the final stats on that game he had. But he just the route running for him, you saw what his potential is on that game tying the head fake and the contested catch in the back of the end zone to tie that game up in the fourth quarter was just impressive. You saw what he's capable of. And like I said, he played both sides of the ball when this season when he was available to. He had 19 tackles, 2 interceptions, 190 yards on the year with 4 touchdowns. Like I said, not astronomical numbers, but you don't see many players nowadays or at all. The only last player I can think of who did that really was Deion, who played both sides of the ball at a very, very high level. Not comparing Travis Hunter to him at this time, but that makes you think that if a player is willing to do that, and that was something that Florida State had thought about, is Travis Hunter a guy that would be willing to do that because he's such a athletic freak that's able to do that? Is that someone who could do it at the FBS level, at a high level program like Florida State? And he showed that when he was on the defensive side of the ball, many teams didn't throw to his side, and when they did, they paid for it, and that accounts for the 2 interceptions he had. And you saw it on display in that game as well, and towards the end of the season when he was healthy. So once again, I think he's very capable of playing at the next level, and you'll definitely see that as he did enter the transfer portal this week. And I think the question is, one, does Florida State, well, one, will he follow Prime to Colorado? Two, does Florida State have any chance to re-enter that recruitment battle? Because if you saw Travis's statement, he said that he's going to think about open up his options, basically reopen his recruitment, and it's not a guarantee that he goes to Colorado and follows Coach Prime to Colorado. He's going to weigh all his options and he's going to take his time. He said he was going to absolutely take his time and think through all his options and make sure he is a fit at Colorado, which to me tells me he's going to see who Coach Prime brings into that program, because that was a 1-11 program. And to Prime's credit, at Jackson State, even though they were an FCS school, he had brought in 4 and 5-star talent to Jackson State, and they were a 10 to 11 win team by the time Travis Hunter got there. So he knew he could win games there, and he could play at a very high level, even at an FCS program. And he knew probably he was going to stay there just 1 year. Let's be honest with ourselves. So he could elevate that HBCU program, put a spotlight on it, and then knew he could transfer out a year later once Prime was going to go for another job. It makes some money with Barstool and NIL deals, stuff like that. So I think that plan worked out for him. But now I think he's willing to step back and say, okay, let's see who we can bring into Colorado in the portal. Is there going to be one, can I compete? Which I think is yes. Two, who's my quarterback going to be? Seems like it's going to be, Sanders' son, who by all regards is going to be probably a very capable quarterback at the FBS level. And Coach Prime has already said, this is your start. He walked into the Buffalo's locker room and said, pointed at Schroeder and said, my son is your quarterback now. You're starting quarterback now. So I think Travis is going to have some familiarity being who's going to be throwing the ball. So there's that chemistry there. But I think he wants to see who else is in that locker room and is it the right fit for him. But can Florida State even re-enter that recruitment? In my estimation, no. I think that bridge has been burned, and not so much that there's bad blood there, but I think the way it went down with the throwing of the hat and also the way that Florida State is comprised now, you have probably the deepest wide receiver room that you've had in over a decade, since maybe the national championship team. And in terms of talent available to you, I think you have as many proven weapons as you did then. Now, in terms of transfer talent coming in, you have Hakeem Williams. Hakeem, if he does indeed sign, which by all regards I have not heard of any flipping, but you never know nowadays. Coming up to the final day, if he signs a 5-star guy that I think will be able to make an immediate impact with Johnny Wilson, Winston Wright, and a slew of other guys already in that room. Along with the tight ends you're bringing in, I think you're going to have one of the most talented and deep wide receiver units you've had in quite a while, maybe a decade or so since the national championship team. So I think, one, you don't necessarily need to bring him in. It would be great to have him on the defensive backside, absolutely. But two, I don't think it's worth the headache. And one, I don't think it would be realistic. I think you would have to make an unbelievable NIL pitch to get him back in the fold. But two, I don't think you actually don't need him on the offensive side. It'd be great to have him, obviously, a talent like that, but I don't think you necessarily need him. It'd be more beneficial on the defensive end of things, if anything, which I definitely think he would be an improvement on the defensive backside. But I don't think, obviously, it's worth the headache. That NIL package is probably worth going after another transfer, like you've already seen on the defensive or on the offensive line front, the tight end front, and potentially for a guy like Cypress from UVA, another defensive back that you're more likely to get because there's no previous kind of signing day situation that's happened in the past. This is a fresh relationship, more or less there. So, I don't see it happening. I give it maybe less than a 1% chance that FSU is in that recruitment or involved at all. I think most likely the scenario that happens is that I do see Hunter most likely going to an SEC program. I think if Travis Hunter didn't go to Jackson State, I think he was probably going to flip to Georgia. And I think Georgia is very much into this recruitment of him right now. And even though they do not use the portal much at all, I think Kirby Smart's come out and it's kind of like Dabo and says he doesn't believe in using the portal really at all. They're one of those programs that likes to develop from high school, and they have so much stacked talent right now that they don't really need to use the portal either. They're in a fortunate state like that. But I think this is where they'll make the exception. This will be one of those funny scenarios where are they willing to break their own rule to get a very 5-star talented guy who's a year away from is a year out of high school, right? Will they break their own rule and look like a hypocrite for a guy that can make an immediate impact on their team, which I absolutely believe they will. Because their defense is good, but it has had its breakdowns this season. So is Kirby Smart willing to look like a hypocrite once to bring in this guy like that? Because they absolutely can. They do have the money. They do have the NL program set up to be able to get him in line. And he can immediately, Travis Hunter, compete for a national championship if he wishes to, because he probably has 1 or 2 years left in college football before he goes pro. And does he want to go for a national championship while he has the time left versus going to Colorado and probably not competing for at least 3 years for a national championship there, and maybe not having the NIL resources. I mean, Barstool, he'll probably still have that there, but I think he's much more going to have development tools, facilities, and the chance to play for a national championship and have spotlight of the SEC at Georgia. So I think that's probably his best landing spot. The other guy that I think is interesting is Kevin Coleman. This is the kid who wasn't necessarily committed to Florida State, but he was considered a huge FSU lean, I think, leaning into signing day. And once again, he was, he had talked to Oregon and USC, and it was coming down to 3 or 4 schools. And then it was a surprise pick on signing day when he went to Jackson State. And I think many people saw, Hunter and Coleman as kind of a package deal, and that they may go to Florida State together. And then they ended up going to Jackson State together. And they wanted to make an impact on the HBC programs, and Deion was able to make that pitch to make the really get into Kevin Coleman and get him to come, which is kudos to them. And Kevin Coleman's definitely had an impact at Jackson State in his 1 year there. Especially in the championship game against North Carolina Central, 137 yards and 7 receptions and a touchdown. Really showed out in that championship game for them in the HBCU national title game. On the season, he had 510 yards, 3 touchdowns. So, like I said, for a true freshman to have 500 yards across the season, I think that's pretty impressive. And it's what you expect from a high 4-star. Some sites would consider him a 5-star caliber receiver. But I think this is another guy who, he was rated out of high school the number 1 slot receiver in the country, number 1 prospect in Missouri, that is going to have options. And I think he's going to have options within high top 10 programs. And he's going to take his time as well. Does he want to follow, does he want to follow Deion and the resources to Colorado and potentially take time to develop that program to compete for national championship? Or does he want to decide that, I want to compete right now for a national title? Do I want to go to, because I believe, because he has the chemistry with Shooter and that quarterback chemistry, which is nice to have. He'll have that at Colorado and be able to slot in right away and be able to have that that quarterback chemistry and be able to compete right away for a starting spot. That's not an issue at all. But they're going to be on the lower runs of the Pac-12 and have to compete against Oregon and USC and UCLA. In Utah. So you're not going to immediately probably compete for a Pac-12 championship for at least a couple of years, even if you can bring in a lot of transfers, right? So, and I know he's being courted by a couple of those higher up programs. So I think for him too, he may make the decision that I love you, Deion, but I only have 2 more years probably before I jump the ship and go to the NFL. So he's probably gonna weigh his options, and I think he's another guy that may not stick with Deion and say we had a great time, we elevated Jackson State, we got to the championship game, we didn't win it necessarily, but I'm going to go and I'm going to try to compete for a national championship right away, and especially a high value conference championship as well at one of these top 10 programs. So I see a kid like that potentially. I don't know. I see him potentially. I don't see him with Colorado. I mean, do I see Florida State in the picture there? Once again, probably not. Just because I would love him, but I don't see him because of our depth there. If you asked me 2-3 years ago, absolutely. That's why we were recruiting this kid, right? This is why we were recruiting Travis Hunter, because we were so desperate at that position at wide receiver that we needed Travis Hunter. We needed Kevin Coleman. We needed playmakers. But now look at us. We have those playmakers have come. They've emerged. You had Pokey step up. We're losing him, but we have him. We have him show up. We got Winston Wright coming in. He'll be back. We have Johnny Wilson. We have Micah Pittman. We have 2 new playmaking tight ends coming in. Jaheim Bell. And the kid from Shorter University. We have these guys stepping up. We have these transfers coming in. So even though we couldn't get them out of high school, we're using the portal to our advantage to get these guys multi-years available to them. We're making immediate impacts at their position. So, it's kind of like we needed you then. We don't need you now. And I think that's why we probably won't pursue these guys. And And at the same time, they probably may not be looking at us because of that position as well, because they would have to compete more so here than they may have to at other positions. So we wish both Travis and Kevin good luck, because uh, they're not going to need our luck because they're talented individuals. But if Kevin wants to come on board and compete for a spot, I would love to have Kevin. Like I said, I think he'd be great in that slot position. But I think we have Winston right at that role, so I don't think, if he's willing to compete there, I would love to have it. So Kevin, if you're listening, we would love to have you. But I could see definitely Kevin. Maybe he goes to a Miami. Maybe he goes to an Oregon or USC. I could see him going back to the schools that originally recruited him, and those connections are still going to be there. I still think he's a good fit at those schools. Bo Nix comes back at Oregon. USC is going to reload again the same way. They're going to lose their quarterback, but they're going to reload the same way. So I could see him slotting back into those programs that got recruited him the first time around. And those are teams, Oregon, USC, those are teams that are going to compete right away for a national championship. And for the Pac-12 championship, the title. So I see him being right back, looking at those schools again and evaluating those schools. And I see him probably picking one of those two if I had to put in my bet in right now. But once again, this is just my analysis. I don't have any insider knowledge of what's going on, but that's what I would expect. I would say Florida State once again has a 1% chance of laying that kid. But if we do, even better. So that's just my quick analysis. There's guys like Luke Allmeyer that we missed out on who are now in the portal as well. I think Luke wants to start right away. He's another playmaker that committed and flipped his decision to go to Ole Miss, and now he's transferring. I believe he probably wants to start right away, and he's still weighing his options. Luke's a kid that I would love to back up Travis for a year, and then Travis goes on to the NFL. I just don't know if Luke's willing to sit a year and develop. I wish he would have stayed and been ready and tooled up and competed with the quarterback depth that we have now, but it didn't work out. So I expect him to go to another program and compete right away. So Luke's a guy that's another commit that I don't see coming back to Florida State. But I would love for him to compete with Tate Rodemaker for that spot, but I absolutely don't see it happening either, because I think Luke is talented, but and he's had some experience with Pax with Dart at Ole Miss, but I just don't think that's why he's leaving, because he wants to compete right away, and he's not going to sit behind Travis, who's very much entrenched. Also, the experience that Tate and now Duffy there have behind Travis. So that's it for now. Let us know in the comments. Do you agree that we have no shot at Travis Hunter and Kevin Coleman, or do you disagree that they're not going to go in fall prime to Colorado? Let us know in the comments. Like the video, subscribe. We're going to have a lot of these shorter videos coming up, these instant reactions, news, stuff like that, and commentary. But let me know in the comments. Do you think Kevin Coleman and Travis Hunter are going to follow prime to Colorado, or where do you think they're going to go? Because I still think it's interesting to follow kids that we recruited heavily and were once commits or very leaning to us, and then see them popping into the transfer portal. Because some of these kids we will follow up on, but right now, luckily, we don't need wide receiver depth. We have great receivers. So let us know in the comments what you think. Thanks again. We'll see you guys soon, and go Noles.